tell me if I'm right or wrong on this. Has Insta360 just killed the DJI Pocket? I know it's quite dramatic, but everything I've seen about the Luna seems to scream, this is probably the one that you should buy if you don't already own one. Hello and welcome to the DCW News Podcast. My name's James Arteis. I'm the editor-in-chief of digitalcameraworld.com, and I'm joined today by Adam Juniper. I was going to give you a proper title, but basically you are our action cam and 360 cam expert, primo del mundo, which is why you are here today.
Don't forget drones, James.
Drones as well, but these guys don't fly that we're talking about today. We're talking about the Insta360 Luna, which, so I'm not as keyed up on this as you are. To my mind, and tell me if I'm right or wrong on this, has Insta360 just killed the DJI Pocket? I know it's quite dramatic, but everything I've seen about the Luna seems to scream, this is probably the one that you should buy if you don't already own one. Maybe if you already own one. Yeah, so,
I mean, one of the really obvious thing about it is they got it out first. Like,
exactly.
Go to Amazon.com, you can buy the Luna Ultra. You can't buy the Pocket 4P. We know it's coming. I've held it in my hands. I've been to its unveiling.
Prestigious launch.
Yeah, prestigious. Yeah, Cannes Film Festival. That's a proper place. There was a red carpet on which I felt thoroughly out of place. But
that's the best place to be. If you're on the red carpet, you don't belong there. That's the best place. I mean, as a slight sideline, I know we're talking about the Luna, but you've mentioned the DJI sort of being here but not really here. How big a deal is like the whole US embargo, sanctions, whatever the proper word is these days? How much is that hampering?
Oh, yeah, that's a different version of being here but not being here. Like not getting it out for sale because you haven't got it to market yet, and not getting it out for sale because the US government are looking at you funny.
Right. So what are you guys
different?
up to?
Yeah.
So I suppose part of my thought is that hampering DJI / has Insta really pounced on this and gone, opportunity, or is this something organic that's kind of been in the works for a while?
This has been going on for a while. Insta360 say they've been developing it since 2020, whereas this has come in, obviously, more recently, the legislation. As it currently stands, it seems to be all Chinese drones, and it also affects Insta360's drone division, which is anti-gravity A1. So how DJI seems to have responded is they've just stopped bothering submitting new products, including things that aren't drones, to the US government for approval, or at least some things, and that does seem to include the Pocket. But they do seem to still get on sale in the US, just not on the DJI website. They go through Amazon, maybe eventually through a second seller, not second-hand, sorry, but you know the
one of them third-party fellows.
Yeah, exactly. B&H seem to get these things, other stores in the US. So ultimately, they'll get there, but maybe they won't have a price set, how you get a recommended retail price, not so much in the US. It's
right, yeah. Suggested retail price, that's a US phrase, isn't it? An SRP.
That's it. Yes, sorry.
Yeah. So I don't want to make this too much of a DJI convo, but it's impossible to talk about this product and not talk about DJI.
They did own the market since they created it.
Well, right, exactly that. And you are an owner and a user of other Insta360 products. Do you think that buying an Insta360 Luna day one or sort of in the release window is a safe bet, or are we still safer with the devil we know? Not that DJI devils, but with the brand we know and trust. Does Insta360 have any sort of reputation for, we've got to fix this down the line with firmware, or are these killer specs kind of exactly what we're going to get out of the box?
No, they do seem to have a pretty solid reputation when it comes to firmware updates and software. In fact, Insta360's first, the name 360 is because the first thing they set about doing in any seriousness was 360-degree cameras. And that is hard to get right in software. You have to do the software as well. And that's how they got ahead. That's how they eased GoPro aside for quite a long time, was by producing the best software. And I think it's probably how they stayed ahead of DJI in that one category, is by having a really good app. And they had the app. Not only did they bother to do the app for desktop and phones, but they also made plugins for our favorite editors, Final Cut and Premiere, which is, I think, going above and beyond. And it shows that they are there for the long haul.
Well, this is a big piece of the puzzle, right? Because I think a lot of people, and this is for every camera, not just for the Insta or not just for the Pocket, but the image taking bit is just one part of it. But really, you spend the lion's share of your time with the interface, right? Dealing with the sort of extracting clips or moving stuff around. So having a really good app, even if your product isn't the best, I'm not saying Insta's product isn't the best, but having a really good app and really good software may be kind of more important, as important as the camera itself.
I think for 360 cameras, the whole idea is that you do it somewhere more comfortable. Like if you're doing some action, if you're doing something exciting, the chances of you being able to frame the shot are limited by the fact that you are definitely charging down a mountain at 100 miles an hour. Everyone's life is that exciting.
Or in a parachute or, some other such thing.
Yeah, definitely. We all do that all the time.
It's how I get to work, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the only way, isn't it? So yeah, the opportunity to reframe when you're sat at your laptop or desk or, commuting later is ideal. That's not quite so true of the gimbal cameras. There, of course, the idea is that we're going to use a bit of the intelligence of the device to keep our subject in place. So you want the device to be good as well. And there you might say DJI did have a head start. That's how they developed the technology, because they made drones and drones needed to keep the camera steady. So they had a lot of small gimbals, which is probably how they thought, let's stick one of these on the top of a stick and call it a camera.
Yeah, right, which actually is really, really clever in this sort of vloggy, creatory day that we live in. What, if anything, is the difference between the stabilization in the Luna versus any of the Pockets? And I'm assuming the Pockets have their stabilization has always been really good. Has it been noticeably better on like the 3, the 4, or has it always just been at a level?
The difference has always been really subtle. So it steadily improves. And the other technology that DJI have been developing is subject tracking. So I think it's now in its active track 7 or 8. It's just ever so slightly better at letting you pick an item on the screen, draw a little box around it with your finger. It's a 2-inch touchscreen, so it really is just tapping, but it can spot a human or a pet or a car, something like that, or just any object really, and keep that in the center of the shot. So you can just walk past it and get a nice smooth shot, which is really good for picking all sorts of B-roll. And of course, that approach, that similar idea is all, I won't say copied, but certainly Insta360 seem to have had very much the same idea with theirs. So this is the Luna. And
look at you with your show and
Pocket.
tell.
This is the Pocket 4, which is the most recent on-sale product from DJI, which the key difference, we turn them on in very much the same way. Ooh, excuse me.
Snazzy.
Now, there's something else I noticed about this, which I think does tell a bit about the story, but again, this isn't final software. Not quite as quick, is it? In fact, I think this one needs its firmware updating is the answer to that. Normally, it pops up a little faster. At the moment, it's telling me it's preparing its touchscreen update.
Right.
But this is a single camera. So that's the tradition that DJI have been keeping up until now. And the 4P is going to introduce 2. Whereas the Luna here has 2 straight off the bat. And when it powers up, it'll put them next to each other. This is embarrassing, isn't it? It's not normally this slow. It's normally like maybe a second or slower, slightly laggy, but...
Look at you, you're a sleeper agent for DJI trying to torpedo the concept.
It does seem, it feels like it, doesn't it? This does pop off, though. That is a big difference that we haven't seen from DJI's gimbal cameras, although they do have a little pop-off remote on their phone gimbal.
Right. So I was going to ask you about that, because that's the sort of thing I see, and I look at these things in quite a crude way, right? So I look at the headline specs, at like 8K, we'll talk about that in a minute, the dual lens, but really in terms of the... yeah, in terms of the interface, I think, that removable touchscreen, just for ease of use, like you say, drawing the boxes or tapping your subjects or just any kind of interface, that seems to me like, that could be a bit of a game changer. Or even hand that off to your wife or your partner, whoever, can be almost like a remote operator or something. Am I making too much of that, or is that as big a deal as I'd like it to be?
No,
in my head?
well, I mean, yeah, you didn't even need a wife. When I was testing this out at the launch, I was able to use a traffic bollard, and so both of these, because they don't encourage you to take family members over to press events.
This is a tragedy, isn't it, really? Everyone thinks
I know.
journalists have a great old time of it, but it's rubbish.
But you get these little battery extension pieces or little smaller ones. For both of them have very similar designs. A USB thing plugs into the bottom. We can have conversations about why the designs are so similar.
Mm-hmm. Maybe a reason for that.
Yeah, or we can leave that to the courts, possibly. But in this case, Insta360 have gone with very small fold-out legs. They're just tiny little, they're paperclip-like wires, but it does the job. And you can rest that on the surface of the top of a traffic bollard and then grab your remote, take your remote away. That stays active, that touch screen. So you can actually line up your shot, use the joystick on there and the zoom, if you like. So, and there's a microphone in here, so you can arrange a really nice shot.
Was a mic as well?
Yeah.
Okay, right.
So if you hold it carefully.
Yeah.
One man or one person vlogging operation with a nicely composed shot of the background, which is markedly different from... It is a different step, I think, from the technology, which was very much a hold it in your hand and get a nice shot before.
Yes.
Or the ability to get nice, smooth shots in lots of different ways. Now you can actually put it somewhere at a distance. Sure, you could do that before, but you had to rely on a wireless microphone and gesture controls.
Is this, because I've only ever seen, so I've seen loads of these out in the wild, right? The Pocket specifically, I know we're talking about the Luna, but I've seen gimbal cameras in the wild increase. I think everybody has. You see them on holiday. You see them at all the press events we go to. I know Gordon from Camera Labs, that's his main sort of vlogging and recording camera now. So I always see people doing the carrying thing. I've only ever seen one person, maybe it's because they were brave and weren't worried about it getting nicked. I've only ever seen one person sort of put it stationary on top of like a rubbish bin or whatever and walk around and use it sort of follow focus and stuff. Is that like a realistic use of the tech? Notwithstanding somebody might run along and steal it. Is that super reliable? Because obviously, having not used it myself, I'm relying on you here to fill in the blanks.
Insta360, they launched at the Leica campus, and that felt like the sort of place where the bollard, everything felt safe, to be honest. I didn't think anyone was going to run away with it, not least because a lot of the other people there were also holding pre-release versions, so they probably had one already.
Yeah.
The subtle difference, I think, between the Insta approach and the DJI one is that when you build the pieces together, you get the device. Again, you've got USB thing connect together, these clips on the side, but then the tripod is an additional component. So it is one more little irritation. Admittedly, a Meteor tripod base, but that's one more thing to think about.
Right.
Whereas a decent chance you're going to be wanting to carry that because that is the battery extension anyway.
Yeah, gotcha.
So that does sort of alleviate an effort. So that's one thing. The other thing is if the screen is there and you're walking away from the screen, I don't know about your eyesight, but...
Yeah, about the same, mate. So these are like very esoteric, I guess, physical hands-on things. We should probably talk about spec stuff because I think that's probably what people are going to be interested in. I'd like to get your opinion on 8K in general, because to me, 8K is kind of nonsense, right? Everybody wants 8K. Nobody actually watches anything in 8K. Very few people can even edit in 8K. But everybody's kind of like, well, if I shoot in 8K, I can crop in, I can do this, I can make camera moves and stuff. Does anyone need 8K? Is it worth buying a Luna for 8K? Or are you better off with like 4K 240? Or, are you better having better 4K? Or is 8K worth it as a headline spec, I guess?
I think there's a certain irony that you've got a device which is easier to compose from a distance in different ways. So the chances of needing the 8K for the recomposing later approach feel slightly lower.
Right.
8K's it's just a way of shoving more data down that you can do something with later, but it is, as you say, not as essential as all that. And on the flip side, for the Pocket 4s, DJI have put up to 240 frames a second, the slow-mo. So if you're going to get nice slow-mo in water, it's 120 on the Insta360 side and 240 on DJI's side. That is a nice thing to have. Both of them offer 10-bit, so that's the area where people are going to be thinking about re-editing more. Yeah, it's 8K doesn't feel as exciting to me as the detachable remote, which feels like a huge win.
Yeah, just a harder thing to put on a spec sheet, that, isn't it? Because it sounds kind of boring until you sort of explain what it is. Tell me more about the two lenses, because again, as someone from a more traditional camera background, the additional focal length, the ability to zoom, that feels like a big thing to me as well. Obviously, you've gone from the traditional ultra wide angle, I guess the sort of the vlogging creator kind of look, and now you've got this other optional view. Tell me more about the dual lenses, and I guess to you, is that something you're like, okay, need that straight away? Or is it more, can live without it?
Well, yeah, that's funny. I was a little bit surprised. I was less excited by it than I thought I would be, but I found myself using it all the time. So you go into it and you think, this offers the creative things. Much the same way as I did when they started adding extra telephoto lengths to my camera phone, you know. You're like, I immediately demand this higher resolution. Which I might not use, but then when you do, and it's the only thing you have with you, it's amazing. It makes a huge difference if you're making stabilized shots of different things at different angles. It definitely helps, again, for those shots that I was composing at a distance, to put myself with the background at a sort of natural distance. You've got one, what we call, what seems like a sort of standard phone wide that we're used to is the 1 times, and then it's 3 times in both cases, and a sort of digital zoom magic is done to give you that same smooth operation through if you want. In the Insta360 version, they even have a tactile, they're quite pleased with this, zoom button, just like you might see on a camcorder style.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Which is definitely an improvement on the offering that DJI have, which is that you tap something on the touchscreen that changes the functionality of the joystick, which I found myself getting confused in all the time. Like, I'm trying to move the camera head around using the joystick, and all of a sudden it's changing the zoom, which is weird.
That's an interesting point. So I'm guessing that there will be some crossover, some folks who have maybe got an earlier generation Pocket, or maybe they've got a Pocket 3 and they've been lured over by the magic of the Luna. What's the grammar, like menu grammar, or the muscle memory grammar? You've used one for a year or 2 years or 3 years. You pick up the Luna now. How much retraining is there for your brain and your fingers to make it work, or is it pretty much similar?
I think it's easier to go to the Luna because the muscle memory is natural, if you like, because of using a separate wind and telly, style button, all in this small space. Whereas the DJI's, very few people will have done what I've done and, gone between the two at this point, because the Luna's an entirely new product, except people testing them. So DJI's is one that you got used to, and DJI have refined it over time and made it better. And in the Pocket 4s, they have introduced 2 custom buttons that appear underneath the screen when you turn it on. So you have the opportunity to define things yourself and give them sort of double tap options as well. So it's more about using it for your purpose. And I think most content creators will get very used to it. I think 1 or 2 people will find it a little bit frustrating. DJI also put a lot more onboard memory. So you've got 107 gig of storage on device before you even go and buy an SD card or microSD card. Ooh. Whereas Insta360 have given you 47 to play with. Good.
That's not going to get you far with 8K, is it?
No, quite. I mean, personally, I'm much happier putting it onto an SD because for various reasons where I work, it's a lot easier to get data off an SD card than it is to plug things into. But I think a lot of people are happier, especially if you're just copying it onto your phone using an app, to never worry about microSD cards.
Yeah, the camera, especially if you're on holiday or, invariably you'll be in a restaurant or on a beach or something trying to get pictures off, and fumbling with a tiny memory card is maybe not the best thing. You've mentioned phones a couple of times, and I think anyone watching this probably doesn't need this discussion, but I think it's worth bringing up. what are the genuine reasons you would take this device out of your pocket? I don't think either the DJI or the Luna are really pocket compatible. You need a case to protect them and things. But
yeah, I keep shoving it in my back pocket and then worrying I'm going to sit down.
Exactly, and crack the thing in half. But in realistic terms, between that and a nice modern smartphone, I think most phones these days take pretty good footage, pretty good stills, everything else. But, you get yourself a high-end creator-focused phone, and they are stunningly good at video in every respect. Even the stabilization's pretty good. What are the real pros and cons taking this out, I guess, as a dedicated creator versus somebody who just wants a bit of holiday footage? Or, what makes you take this out rather than shooting something on your phone?
I mean, there were several reasons, and especially if you're using the single lens version, you can take this places where if the only thing you lost was this device and not your phone, you'd probably
Right.
be happier.
Yeah.
I say that about all action cameras, and this is connected to that genre. You might let the kids run off with this. You wouldn't let the kids run off with your phone. Again, I have an iPhone Pro Max, so it's still orders of magnitude more expensive than the Pocket 4, for example. But you also have a 1-inch image sensor, 10-bit recording. So it is very capable in low light. And that low light capability is just improved by the mechanical image stabilization, which is like having a Steadicam. Garrett Brown invented a massive rig that you could carry a camera and get smooth video back in the 70s. And now you can just have that yourself in your hand, pass it around and record and take that over. You have a lot more capability, but you don't have quite such risk because it's not your personal device. That's how I see it. And then you throw in the extra capability of the telephoto, and that is amazing how you can't hold the zoom on your phone, especially if you're doing video, smoothly.
Right.
But this bit of electronics at the top can. There are other weird features too. Both of them have an impressive collection of accessories. So the DJI, for example, has, I'll a bit of show and tell.
Go on, show me and tell me. This
little light clips onto the back.
Was that magnetic as well?
Yeah, just magnetically. And it's lets you change the tone.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So that's nice to have a fill light, and it clips onto the back, and it fits both versions. Just even though both, one of them will have more cameras, which I think is a nice touch. Insta360 are going all out. We know that on the way there's going to be a head tracking tool because J.K. Liu, the CEO of the company, has been talking about it on Chinese social media.
Right.
And so you will,
as is wont to do,
you will turn your head and the camera will look in the direction you're looking. And he said that helped him enjoy a major celebration because he didn't waste his time looking into the screen, but enjoyed the event around him.
Imagine that, content creators paying attention to something instead of just filming it. What a joy.
And of course, both are compatible with their respective microphone ecosystems for detachable microphones.
Yeah, which of course might be a really good reason because some people like myself might have one of those mics independently of a gimbal camera and be like, okay, I own that mic. It's going to be compatible with the Insta or the DJI. That's the one I'm going to go for.
And of course, DJI have been doing it a little bit longer. Insta360's mics have been only out for a year, I think.
Yeah, more skin in the game. But yeah, I think it's interesting that this gap, this space, this whatever tariff situation is, and all of a sudden, all this ammunition's been thrown by Insta360. You mentioned Leica, and I know we've got Leica branding, we've got Leica profiles.
Oh yes, says Leica here.
Well, there you go. Yeah, the shiny logo. So tell me, is the Leica stuff just a really expensive Instagram filter, or is the Leica stuff actually substantial and worthwhile?
I was genuinely impressed with the optics on here, so I suspect that there is a bit of respectful listening. The two companies have been working together for 10 years, all told. If you look at the various products that have got Leica co-branding, it isn't just this. There's the Ace Pro action cameras. There's some other devices that came earlier. And Leica have little to lose, really, because it's not like they compete down in this sort of product themselves. So why shouldn't they help out? But there are definitely some filters too. Some film style filters that have appeared in this camera, which do look quite cool. We went out in the German town that name escapes me as we're talking, but Wetzlar, yes, and took some styled photos in the places of the first photos were taken, and applied filters to them. And I promise I will post them.
We should. I've realised I'm gabbing for quite a while. We should probably talk about the blooming price of this thing. This is like $7.50, $7.80,
$769 US,
$769. So it's not cheap, and not that gimbal cameras should necessarily be cheap. Point is, it's an investment. And I guess this is where the conversation, like, is it that much better than my phone? Whatever. In real terms, the use case scenarios of this is probably a lot of social media, right? And maybe, I don't want to say it's just a TikTok camera, but it will be used for things like TikToks, things like Reels, short form content. Does that person really need to spend this much cash to get the results that this probably does deliver? Or is it is their phone good enough for the end use case that most people will be using it for? Is this kind of overkill, or is this money well spent?
Well, I spoke to Max, who's the co-founder of Insta360, and he was like, well, we're not pricing against the market, we're pricing for what we think it's worth. And that's kind of interesting because some people have been saying, the Pocket 4 is quite pricey at, in and around 400. And we haven't yet found out what the Pocket 4P was going to cost when it's the 2-camera version.
Yeah.
Is it worth it? I think it is worth it if you're reaching all of those areas of the market, because it kind of replaces quite a lot of other equipment potentially, microphones, that kind of thing, for a lot of people for whom speed is important, which is those content creators, those people. You
that's
can actually
interesting.
get a lot of stuff.
It's as much workflow, perhaps, as the tech itself. That's interesting.
And another way of looking at it is that's still a lot less than a video camera used to cost.
Very true. Yes.
But that's a minor aside, I guess. But yeah, it's definitely at the higher end for this sort of equipment.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's still at that price shot to number 1 for the first few days on Amazon in the US.
Right. Yeah, been phenomenally, I think justifiably so, has been really, really well received, really, really popular. I guess let's just wrap things up with 2 different cases, right? So first of all, you're a person who owns a DJI Pocket. For whatever reason you want to upgrade, whether it's because it's old or because you just want a new one or whatever. And then also another person who's never owned a gimbal camera before. Is the Luna, in either of its flavors, the one to go for? Or are we still going to say, actually, DJI is the known brand, it's the reliable one, we know and trust it, we know how it works, that's the one to go for? If you're either of those 2 camps, is the Luna the one to plumb for?
If I had a Pocket 3, the most recent iteration before, that's mean I would probably already own some microSD cards for recording on. So one of the big features of the Pocket 4 hasn't got that much appeal for me already.
You sure? Yeah.
Would I rush out to upgrade from the Pocket 3 to the Pocket 4? Not so much. If I was excited by some of the new features of the Luna, maybe. If I was interested in the telephoto effects, I think we all know from when we upgraded our phones, because I think most of us have been through that stage where phones could suddenly zoom and offered better pictures. Then when the 4P is available for sale, or, the Luna now, they're both very appealing for their own purposes. There's a lot to be said for sticking with the system, especially, but even the 4P isn't going to have the removable remote.
The 4 is very good. Yeah. I mean, personally, just the removable touchscreen remote / I didn't even know it's a microphone as well. To me, that's kind of like, that's enough to sway me in the Luna camp. But I'm a man who's easily swayed by clever toys. So
I think, I'm quite looking forward to making sure the next firmware update reassures me.
Yes, right. Yeah. If you're update,
yeah. acutely conscious that this is not the most recent firmware update, and there is one pending.
We'll see if that makes or breaks things. Adam, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for maybe costing me $780. Really nice of you as always. Thanks everybody for watching, and we will see you again on the next episode.